All right, so I have a document that I keep maintained, and it's actually available to the public. So if you go into the GB website and you type the word Stratcom, right, you'll basically see these two documents, right? One of them is a document that I use to just, these are sort of my notes to put information together that I send over to Evan Harris to put out our newsletters, and we're still trying to get consistent about that. And the other one is just more of a notes page. It's called Stratcom Priorities, right? Strategic Communications Priorities. And this is where I kind of keep a list of what I'm doing, thinking in terms of how to promote and what's important. So let me start with this. Revenue generation right now is a strategic priority for GBA. You keep hearing that we're a volunteer organization. That's not necessarily by choice; it's by necessity. We definitely have to get some revenue. Now, grants is one way to do it, right? Now, we do subscribe to grants.gov, and it sends us an email every day of all the grant opportunities. The problem is, one, we don't have the bandwidth to go through those grants, check it out, figure out which ones we have a shot for. And then the idea would be, if there is one that makes sense, and there's lots of them, there's literally so much money available, then if we had a person or a team or some people that would essentially receive these emails and say, haha, here's one that would be good for a GBA or a GBA working group, then the next step would be to kick it over to a working group and have the working group create the technical response. Oh, and I'll turn my camera on, and have the grants team kind of put together the proposal. If we had an infrastructure like that, we would be able to generate all kinds of revenue, and bring the revenue into GBA. We could then flow that revenue through subcontracts to members of those working groups. And one of the things that's just super important is, and we're starting to do this with several projects, right? John Markunis is involved in one, and the healthcare delivery blockchain platform is another. Is GBA can work with GBA members to help bring in opportunities, and then create a structure and then funnel that money back to the people who made it happen. And we can do that even before we create a separate legal entity. The idea would be, once we have enough of that going on, we literally could create a separate legal entity that would be a for-profit business. But we've got to find a way, we've got to find people that are interested in helping generate revenue for us as an organization in the form of grants. The other thing that we're really sort of standing up is the area of investments. And so I'm going to cover a couple of these things, and then I'll pause and get feedback. But what happened a while back, maybe a year ago, is I started to realize that if we couldn't get investment funding, if we couldn't get funds into working groups to generate compensation for people to work on projects, we weren't going to get anywhere. And so about that time, Ingrid, who was a member of the World Business Angel Investment Forum, came to me and said, Gerard, what would you think about GBA being the host organization for the World Business Angel Investment Forum here in the United States? And I was like, I don't know, what is it? And quite frankly, she started moving forward on it without me really sort of paying attention. And then before I knew it, she had drafted up all these documents. We had meetings with very important people, and we were now connected to a group, to a G20 affiliated group of family offices and heads of state, and really an incredible investment community that now provides potential revenue for GBA members. And so this week, actually today, it's actually right now, one of the first events that we're doing together. So she is hosting essentially a social impact pitch competition, and she's got judges that are GBA members and some other invited guests. And this is sort of our first step towards getting investment from people globally into the hands of GBA members. And so we're working on using this technology to do that, and we want to start doing more and more of that, because we need to get revenue to GBA members. As a business league, that's really what we're all about. And the more we can provide that kind of value to our members, the greater value proposition there is for people to join GBA, and essentially we generate revenue through membership. So let me pause there. Any thoughts, comments on any of the other thing in terms of revenue generation is going to be events and sponsorships. So any thoughts, comments on any of this stuff from a revenue generation perspective?
Oh, Gerard.
Yeah. John Dean Markunis.
Yeah, this is John Markunis. I would suggest you mentioned sponsorship. Yes, you mentioned sponsorships is one for revenue generation. How about membership fees? Isn't that part of revenue?
Yeah, it is, and we yeah, we have sort of a handle on memberships. When I put this together, I'm thinking in terms of things that we need to do, sort of in addition to what we're doing now. But is there anything you can think of that we could do to increase membership? Because I think that as long as we continue to do what we have been doing, and when we get to the communications portion of the conversation a little bit later, we're really amping up our communications game. But yeah, I'd be tickled to hear your thoughts, John.
Well, I know this involves finding someone to devote more time on a volunteer basis, but I would think that someone dedicated to finding corporate members who are, whatever amount that would entail in terms of their contribution as a corporate member should be high on the priority list. Corporate members paying the corporate fees. I think someone should be dedicated to finding them, marketing to these entities, corporations, to bring them on board as members. That's the source of revenue, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for volunteering. Yeah, Jovan, your thoughts?
So my thoughts is that this requires someone who is doing this professionally, a professional, not a volunteer. And if we can basically hire someone to do it, it would be optimal. Or hire someone to do it for on commission basis. But this really this is not a volunteer thing. I think we have a very good value proposition. I think our membership is dirt cheap considering what we are offering right now. Yeah. Both corporate and individual. Individual is a song. You get the access, you get the opportunity to speak at pretty exclusive events to pretty exclusive crowds, and you can access member-only working groups and communities.
Jovan, I agree with you. We don't have the funds to pay our existing staff. Bringing on additional staff right now, we just don't have the funds to do it. So
okay, so let's find a sponsor to sponsor this person. Let's go first to our existing members and sponsors. Say, okay, dedicated fundraising. We are fundraising for this specific position. Over.
Okay. All right. All right. So let me move into any other thoughts on revenue generation, and then I want to move into some of our regular events. All right. So when I talk about,
this is John Markunis. I agree with Jovan that perhaps GBA could hire someone to work on a commission basis to look at bringing in corporate members. A large organizational member brings in $20,000. That's significant, right? I think we should hire somebody to work on a commission basis to look for corporate members at this level, medium at 5,000, large at 20,000. I think that'll help. That'll be the incentive to bring in incentive for someone to do this.
Jovan, can I suggest that the Tiger team put together a job description for a commission-only salesperson?
Yes.
Okay.
I will. Okay.
I think that's a good thing. In fact, we even might want to consider hiring a commission-only salesperson in each of the regions that would be focused on that region.
Let's start small, and let's also consider what I just said. Let's try to get an organizational sponsor to sponsor a retainer for that person, because people work much better when they're getting some money than when they are commission salespeople.
I agree, but let's put that on the and I'm calling it a tiger team. What is it called? Your task force?
We just got named the Tiger Team.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right, listen, but my perspective from the very beginning, see, I've never really focused on revenue generation before. I recognize now I have to, but we've been focusing from the very beginning on value creation. And one of the ways that we create value is through these regular events. So I want to talk about some of these, let everybody know what's going on. The first one is the GBA investor and startup community. So Rob was asking about which communities were valid. This is a community of interest. We're currently looking for a leader for it. Ingrid is leading it right now. And this particular group, the whole idea is what Ingrid does is she brings GBA members into the community that are looking for funding. And she teaches them essentially how to put together their pitch deck, what investors are looking for, gives them advice on what type of funding to go, which types of investors, and she coaches them. So she basically has sort of a group and sort of an individual path. So she meets with them in groups, right, to make sure that they're ready. Once they're ready, she then narrows the funnel and then actually walks them into the place where they can get funding for their projects. It is an incredibly valuable asset and resource. It's one that I think we don't communicate anywhere near as well as we should. And again, part of our efforts in amping up our communications and outreach and some of the new tools that we've acquired really will help us a long way in this. The voting working group, as you can imagine, there's a lot of emotional energy around voting in elections. There's a lot of people that are passionate about this subject, but the voting, despite what we heard about the technological capabilities of blockchain to solve these problems, it will go nowhere unless we can deal with the political realities and the fear of change, right? So the voting work group is working on creating a set of standards, and I'll talk about the blockchain maturity model here, but the voting standards, and we have a GBA member that is a voting company, right, called Votes. So what we're attempting to do is take Votes as a candidate, take a bunch of people that are really smart in the voting space, and see if we can come up with a set of standards that at a certain point, when the Votes application satisfies the criteria can be developed and defined. GBA will be able to certify Votes or any other voting election system that's a blockchain system, and that will do two things. Number one, it'll give great credibility to GBA. It's going to get us interacting with the EAC and other national and international organizations, and companies that are in that space will essentially want to be a part of that. The other regular event that we're doing is the Artificial Intelligence for Government, and they meet on the first Tuesday of every month. This is led by Oki Mek, who's a Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer for U.S. Health and Human Services, which is one of the largest government departments in the U.S. And they meet with AI professionals every month to talk about lessons learned, best practices, and it's just a top-notch meeting and group. And if we did a better job of communicating what they're doing, and we've got people in that group from Bahrain, from throughout the Middle East, Europe, Africa, the United States. It's an incredible group, and that's closely tied with the regulatory group. So Mark Montoya and Gabby Coons, they have this meeting of regulators from around the world, and everybody's talking about how we need regulatory clarity, regulatory consistency, and they're meeting with a group of people, and their group is getting larger every month. talking about, you know, lessons learned and how they can put all that together. We're also meeting with our smart cities working group. They meet, they're sort of based out of Florida. They're looking at the smart city standards kind of around the world to help folks that are interested in building out smart cities to understand, you know, what the resources are. Kamea is leading the GBA Emergency Management Working Group. They're looking at building an emergency management platform that is basically crowdsourcing information along 3 tiers, so, or 3 uh, 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 areas. The first one is civil disturbance. The second one is environmental disasters, hurricanes, floods, things like that. And then the last one is public health emergencies. And so they're looking at creating, on top of the government business blockchain platform, an emergency management system that any government can plug into, any community can plug into, so they can crowdsource data so that people can identify resources, threats, and threats. So there's one other, resources, threats, and capabilities. That's it. The Mayapan's going to be talking about, I think later today, about the blockchain maturity model. No, I think he's already covered that. The blockchain maturity model, which is foundational to literally all the working groups. And this is a set of standards to help investors, government acquisition professionals, companies understand what the expectations would be, the minimum standards, Terasu, what the standards would be to for each level. So whether it's funding a pilot project, or you know, or seed funding, whether it's putting a blockchain system in operation, enterprise deployment, or global deployment, it lays out the expectations of any blockchain system for that. And then, of course, we do our weekly calls, which are you know, internal to GBA only. The cryptocurrency maturity profile, that's the output of the standards working group. The other thing that's a strategic initiative for us is the Gba Token Project. And is Mark back here? No, Mark's in the audio. Oh, Mark, you are here. Mark, you want to talk a little bit about the token project, and you know, you can talk a little bit about what it is, but talk a little bit about why, you know, from your perspective, why we're doing it, why it has an importance strategically for the organization.
Sure. So the GBA token project really has a couple of different parts. One is the actual token itself, the mechanics, the fact that it's a cross-blockchain token. That's particularly important so that we're able to transmit value throughout the GBBP, so that we're able to sell services from one blockchain to another and to various systems. The GBA token itself is important as a mechanism for the GBA to determine value for the purpose of governance. GBA tokens have actually been split into 2 pieces. One is the GBA token that's redeemable currently for $1 for GBA memberships, courses, events, things of that sort. And the other part is a GBA voting token. We are slowly but surely moving towards the GBA being a distributed autonomous organization, a DAO. And the amount of voting power that a given member has will be determined by their participation as judged by voting tokens. We have done the first wave of initial token distribution. People were asked to fill out a form describing their contributions since the inception of the GBA. Based on that, the electors decided how many tokens to award. There will be another call for people to fill out such a form. Unfortunately, Too many people missed the opportunity, so we're actually going to give them a second opportunity. In total, for the initial distribution, there will be 250,000 tokens awarded. Once we do the initial distribution, there will be a monthly distribution of GBA tokens. The method by which the tokens are distributed is somewhat interesting and feeds directly back into GBA governance. We are actually using a hierarchical voting system so that if, say, we were distributing 30,000 tokens one month, the first choice that the voters have is which of the 7 goals or major areas of interest the GBA is doing. For instance, you might decide to allocate 20% of your tokens to events. You might decide to allocate 50% of your tokens to working groups and regions. It's your choice as to what is most important. These then filter down through, say, the individual events or working groups to regions. And once the number of tokens that a given, say, working group gets, the members of that working group then determine how they will divide those tokens among the members, presumably by how much effort and success a person has contributed to that working group. So hopefully, if there are underserved areas, people will allocate tokens to basically activate it. There will certainly be incentive for people to move to and contribute to that working group, and thus the GBA's objectives will be fulfilled. Did I miss anything, Gerard?
Thanks, Mark. You certainly covered the mechanics of it. I want to talk a little bit about sort of the why, right? We talked earlier about sharing revenue back with chapters and things like that. So eventually, and we can't get into details with this yet, but those tokens will have value within our community, right? And what we want to do is we want to take essentially the revenue that we receive and use this revenue to help send that back to the people that are making contributions. So we're not, and we want the community to help decide how that value distribution is going to be done, right? So that it's not, I don't know if you call it democratic or consensus, but basically it's not some guys at the top deciding, who gets what, but it's really us as a community, just being appreciative for the folks that are making those contributions and really try to rewarding generosity and rewarding people that create value in a way that is hopefully as fair as we can make. Yeah, Mark.
So as a necessary clarification, people like node owners, where they're being granted a number of tokens, they will actually be given utility tokens. And the reason why is that otherwise we'd run afoul of the SEC, that we're basically creating money out of nothing and being used to pay what looks like a salary. So
yeah, there's two. Yeah, there's two components to that. There's the utility tokens, which clearly are going to be much more like a stable coin. And then there's reward tokens, which can be exchanged for membership fees, training, conferences, and stuff. So I think Mark, wouldn't you say there would be value in both the reward and the utility tokens?
Oh, absolutely. And the voting tokens will probably at some point be used so that members determine the distribution of utility tokens that we get for providing services. So in one sense, the members will set, for example, the quote unquote salary of the node owners. The community could thereby also decide that certain other people or certain groups are worthy of funding with real money as opposed to just something that has value within the GBA community.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and so I think that this project is instrumental in a couple for a couple reasons. Number one, we are going to be leaders out there in figuring out how to take an organization like this, a global organization, and actually be able to implement decentralized leadership, right? And the good news is we can kind of figure it out in an industry association like this, where if we mess up or we make some mistakes, it's not the same thing as having a coup in a foreign country, right? It's we are, there's no nuclear missiles at our disposal or warships. There's, we are a sort of a low threat area that's a good laboratory for this. But I'm really excited about us doing the hard work to get this figured out and creating the models that hopefully one day other organizations will be able to pick up, and we can lead from that perspective to help make the world a more fair, just place. The other products that we're looking at launching, or that we're in the process of launching, is a cryptocurrency maturity profile. And so what happened was Mark Montoya, Ksenia, a number of incredible leaders, Jorg Molt out of Germany, our friends at Morpheus Analytics out of Australia, Sachin, who was at Georgetown at the time, is now with a cryptocurrency exchange, I think in California. They got together as part of the task force, and they created this 138-page report that's just phenomenal. They pulled data from block explorers, different financial reporting systems, to give financial policymakers a clear understanding of the size, trajectory, and velocity of the cryptocurrency ecosystem, and the impact it has on governments from the perspective of tax collection, law enforcement, ethics. It looks at the issue from a regional perspective, from a functional perspective. Very well researched, the very, very professional document. And that's brought GBA a lot of credibility. We're looking at testifying in front of different state and national legislatures. This is an area where we need help to kind of get the word out, because it really is a phenomenal product. And then from that, they're building essentially this cryptocurrency maturity profile, which is a live feed of data. So they took the data sources they used to create the report, and now they've got a live feed. So if somebody wants to do research and say, I want to see the volume metrics on these different cryptocurrencies respective to a dollar or a yen, or see volume transactions or number of blocks, we've got a live feed of that data that we can cut and slice any way we want to, because what we want is when people to do research, we want them to come to us and to reference the GBA as a source of their data, and really create an environment where financial regulatory folks, financial institutions, they've got a clear understanding of where this whole thing is going. So those are some of the projects that we're working on. Of course, this is all leading up to the Government Blockchain Week, September 27th to October 1st. And for those of you who haven't heard me talk about it, Jiminy Crickets, this thing is going to be the largest, most prestigious government blockchain event in human history. It spans 5 days. It'll be at the U.S. Capitol. It'll be at the we're nailing down the Library of Congress, the British Embassy, the Embassy of Bahrain. Just one of the events, right, is a private meeting of some of the top fintech leaders in the world on the rooftop of the Embassy of Bahrain to talk about blockchain and cryptocurrency. So incredible event. We definitely need help with sponsorship, and we've got a team of about 20 people who are putting that thing together. So
hey, Gerard.
Yeah.
Real quick, we got a question from the chat, and I think I saw you. It might be your next topic. It was George Diego is asking what GBA is doing to spread the word through social media channels, since we have such a large amount, some really great projects. What are we doing, and how are we doing it to really showcase that?
We're going to cover that at 2:30. We got a half an hour
Okay.
dedicated exclusively to how we're going to get the word out. That's a great question. It is extremely important. And that's why we're giving it a whole half hour. Yeah, you have thoughts, comments?
Yes. Only one thing about the conference. I was testing the message recently with possible interviews, and we need to emphasize that the conference is 2 days, because some people, when they hear week, say, I don't have a week. So we really need to be initially selling the conference that happens during the week. We can expect people from the Greater Washington area to come to focus on the week. We can expect people to come for specific events, but we really need to send a message that this is a 2-day conference. One, and then the week second.
Well, what we could do is we could say the future of money governs the law, because I think that is a showcase event, and we could say
Yes.
that we're doing that during Government Blockchain Week, because if you look at the different events, right? So, blockchain for state and local, right? Money, bank, cryptocurrency forum, legal law. These are all, fintech. Wednesday, for example, is really all about fintech. And so these are all, the Blockchain Innovation Economic Growth Symposium, the pitch competition, international trade. These are all very, very separate events, but they all are happening the same week. I don't think we can get rid of Government Blockchain Week.
Oh, we cannot. Even I think that even the name originally came from yours sincerely. But I was telling you, I was testing in communication with people who don't pay attention, and I've had so many. Oh, I don't have a week. No, it's 2 days. You want to open with come to the hill, and you can stay a week.
Well, let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that during the communications meeting that we have with Brian Feinberg and Glenn from IBM and stuff like that, because that is a person's opinion, but let's review that with our communications team, because they're much better about branding and communication strategy than I am. All right, any other thoughts?
Chime in real quick.
Yeah. Go for it,
I'll
Bob.
chime in real quick. One of the things that we've done is highlight a couple of sessions and create the illusion that that's the key conference, which is maybe the Thursday and Friday events, as part of Government Blockchain Week. It's a little bit easier to sell, but we'll still keep the whole brand.
Yeah, I do think Government Blockchain Week. All right. Well, so Jovan, we're gonna have to talk through it. Dino, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Thank you very much, Gerard. My thoughts, and I apologize, I'm not sure whether this comment fits perfectly in this agenda item. In our periodic meetings, you have often made reference to, if I may use the term, relationship between the GBA and the ISO standard organization. So would it be also important somehow, somewhere, to highlight and make it clear what is the level of participation that GBA has with other entities that are important or relevant player in the domain? For example, of course, the ISO standardization organization. There are other entities that are very active in the area. There is the Global Business Blockchain Council. There is the World Economic Forum that also publish relevant white papers and document and guidance. I think it would help if somehow, someplace, GBA would also distinguish itself and make clear what is the value proposition of GBA vis-a-vis these other entities that are very active in the domain. For example, the blockchain maturity model, the other initiative that you mentioned about investing, about cryptocurrency. So what is that the blockchain, that the GBA adds or complements vis-a-vis these other organizations that, like GBA, are international, play a global role, and have a relevant input into the blockchain domain? Thank you.
That's a lot. That's a lot to digest. So I don't really know how to answer that. Let me. I have to do one thing. I got to send an email. So Kathy, who is our events director, is trying to get into the conversation. So let me just send her the link. Kathy, I'm sending you the link via email to your GBA Global. All right. So those are all organizations that are all doing things. We typically have an open door to all those organizations. We offer free membership to other associations. We invite them to participate in everything that we're doing. There's a lot of them. They all do different things. They all serve different areas. So for example, with regards to the blockchain maturity model, we are having an event. Well, Mayapan is raising hands. So Mayapan, would you share a little bit about how we, and Dino, you're aware of this because you're on that same call. But the things that we're doing in our standards working group is similar to the things that we want to do across the board. But Mayapan, go ahead and respond to that comment.
Yes, hi Gerard. Actually, I joined from the auditorium to here, so I had a lag. I missed out few points, but I could understand that Dino's expectation is how we are going to bridge ISO or any other standards. In fact, the same question was there from Mr. Mark Montoyo also yesterday when we were discussing. So the whole interest over here is, of course, ISO is very highest level of standard organization. So where they are building the standards for each and every type of organization and each and every type of with invariability of the size and their documentations or any kind of things. So size and type. So we are going to start up with that round table where we are going to appear along everyone and try to understand where we can bridge or where we can be common in nature. Okay, so if there are two same type of standards or maturity model, then it's going to be a duplication, which we are not going to be a part of that. And we are to be something different, and we should be interoperability should be there. Of course, we should be able to be a stepping stone for ISO certifications or a stepping stone for any kind of establishment or any kind of other models where they are available. So where if we are our level 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 is going to map to their requirement, then of course we are going to be there. Not like one level can duplicate to any other standard, not a big issue. So this is where we are going to pitch into that particular round table where we are going to meet other standard organizations and try to come up to their understandings and interpretations. Of course, ISO, I don't think we can really meet or match to ISO. Okay, so we cannot really match to ISO because ISO is an organization where they are rolling out standards which are meant for any type of organization and any size of organization. So it's a very high level requirement sort of thing. So we are a little bit very specific on the requirements, I suppose.
My opinion, let me tag onto that a little bit, and then I'm about to respond to Frederick or give Frederick the floor. I think that if we look at these different organizations, right, they all have different focuses. And I think that there's a lot of concentric circles, right? So for example, the Chamber of Digital Commerce, right? They really kind of focus on, they're sort of, mostly they're a lobbying organization for the purpose of benefiting their commercial members, right? We're a business league, right? So we don't do a lot. We touch on a little lobbying of Congress, I guess, from an education perspective. But what we're really trying to do is connect government contractors and professionals with people in government that are looking to buy blockchain products and services, right? ISO, they're a global standard. We do some standards, and to the place where it intersects with ISO, there's some synergy and we want to coordinate, right? When our voting group, we're a blockchain, when we're creating blockchain voting standards, we want to connect with the EAC, which is a voting organization, and the blockchain. So I see that there's lots of concentric circles. We cooperate with the Accounting and Lawyer Alliance because lawyers and accountants are interested in blockchain, right? Blockchain people are interested in the legal and accounting aspects. So in those respects, we cooperate. So it's a complex answer. I think we've always kind of looked at the environment as we all have different constituency groups, but if we work together, we can support our different constituency groups better. However, I will tell you from personal experience, there's a lot of those other organizations that quite frankly, they don't want to cooperate with us because they view it more in a competitive environment. And we've made lots of outreaches. In fact, we've gone to some of these organizations and we said, hey, listen, at our event, we're happy to promote your organization. We're happy to have your materials promoting your events, and literally receive zero reciprocity with that regard because they have no desire to support us, right? But we continue to reach out because I do believe it's best for everybody if we're cooperative. Frederick, did you have some comments?
Yeah, no, just adding to that in terms of doing a little like a stakeholder analysis, I would say, or like a little mapping of the key stakeholders we think GBA would want to, would have an interest in creating a relationship with that you guys are already doing. But since GBA has a lot of members, and these members are also part of other groups, standards, and things like that, I don't know if we've gone through. It's a lot of work. We're going through the work of trying to identify a little bit what are the different organizations that the different members are part of, which sort of like give a little bit the indirect influence that GBA can have on these other groups as well.
I think that happens.
Members, right? Sorry.
I think that happens naturally, right? So, for example, when we have our BMM meeting or the voting meeting, right? The people who congregate in there also happen to be members of other organizations, and so I think maintaining sort of a registry of that would be very difficult, but I think that it naturally happens. I do need to move on to one other topic, and that is. Let's see, Jonathan is on the call. We do have another strategic project. And so Jonathan, if you're there, I'm going to ask you to say what you can. Now, we're involved in a project with Jonathan. It's going through regulatory review. So, Jonathan may have to be tempered in what he's sharing. But Jonathan, would you be willing to share whatever you can in terms of your connection with GBA and potentially where we may be going and any thoughts that you have, because your relationship with us is strategic in nature.
Well, first of all, thank you, Gerard. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Wonderful. Well, it's a great honor to be invited and to be a part of GBA now, because our team are all members now as well of the GBA. And we're very excited to be involved with this conference and to be learning a lot more about the organization, particularly on the value props and understanding how the groups work together, and learning a lot more just about the interconnectivity that sort of comes across through the working groups and so on. So it's been a breath of fresh air to understand the network, the breadth and scope, and I commend everybody on all their work. It's really, really impressive. In regards to us in GBA, we've been looking at developing a relationship in the fintech area. And this is particularly looking at, and obviously there's a group here that I'm going to trust your confidentiality with this information because this is the leadership group of GBA.
Hey, Jonathan, I just need to share with you. I think that there's a number of things that you can share, but I just want you to, this is being recorded. It will be available through a YouTube link. Right, so I just want to let
okay, yeah,
you knew that before. Yeah.
So let's look at it this way. I'm going to talk very generally, but you guys can read between the lines, okay? So in the world today, we have seen the effects of how neoliberalism has reached almost like a pinnacle of excellence in what it stands for. But what that ends up doing is it ends up disjointing communities. It ends up capital flight coming out of communities. You just look at the Midwest, the United States, you know, any of you here that are familiar with what's been happening in that part of the world, you know, there's towns that are just empty of businesses. They've lost contact with community. This was started with like they called it the Walmartification of business and communities. And then obviously with what's been going on with the pandemic, that's just got a lot worse. So what we've got now is a major crisis where the Western world is starting to gradually turn into what's happening in Argentina, where we have middle class just goes into basically financial collapse. And as everybody in this call knows, and I'm sure all of the people in this call probably are here for similar reasons, is that blockchain provides a means to basically decentralize power, influence, and responsibility to do really important work in bringing opportunities back to people. And we believe that starts with community financing and getting money back into the communities themselves. And over the last few decades, there's really been an incredible amount of efficiency of taking everything out rather than putting it in. And one of the things that we want to do with GBA is work very, very closely with all the people in this group, the different working groups across the world, as well as tying in with different governments, entities, associations, whatever it might be, to look at ways to allow that decentralization of financing to go on steroids. And we believe that comes from three different modalities. Number one is having a platform that ties into community financing. Number two is tying in economic development initiatives that allow that financing in the community to benefit from the development proposals and initiatives and manufacturing, whatever it might be. And then thirdly, supporting that with educational initiatives that tie in obviously with GBA as well, looking at how do you then get those skill sets that connect to those economic opportunities that then connect into those financial opportunities and then center it into the community. So basically, we're in the process of implementing this. We're going to be making some announcements. We were hoping to do it actually at this event, but we're actually working with the federal government on this and a few others. And it's just taken a little bit longer than what we would have liked. However, I'm very pleased to say that we are moving in a very strong direction. We have large amounts of funding lining up, and we've got global networks that are coming into play that I think are going to be really important as we partner with GBA hand in hand in developing this across the planet. So there's a very exciting opportunity here. We've got a lot of interest with people going, you know, you guys have really cracked a nut here that nobody's managed to do before. And, you know, we're looking forward to, you know, sharing a little bit more about this in September, because at that point, we'll be very ready to go into a lot more detail. And we'll be asking different members and people within this group to gradually sort of come on board over the next few weeks and months. And I look forward to talking to each of you separately or on stream and realizing and developing these initiatives and turning them into reality. And thank you, Gerard, for your leadership, as well as Dr. Sindhu, who's, I believe, on this call as well, and various others who've already been involved. And yeah, it's going to be a hell of a couple of months. And Mark, I think, is here as well. So Mark has been great as well in introducing GBVP, and we're hoping to kind of get tied into that as well. So there's a lot coming, and we'll be excited to share a lot more. Is that okay?
Jonathan, yeah, no, that's perfect, Jonathan. Jonathan, I'm just kind of curious. You have kind of been introduced to GBA fairly recently, and
yeah.
I'm just kind of wondering, what was it about GBA that attracted you, and what's your sort of takeaway when you look at the organization?
Well, my business partner is Joseph Lowe, who's been a member of GBA for 3+ years. He's worked closely with Gerard and others in this team and various others throughout the network. So I've kind of known about GBA for quite a while because of that. And he's obviously the much more technical one than I am. But the thing that I've really liked about it is the community. Like one of the things that we're really focused on is how do you rebuild communities? So obviously looking at GBA, I'm actually coming at it from that perspective. And as you're building, especially, an online international community, how you develop your values, your ethics, and what you stand for is really, really important. And I think, even hearing Gerard go through that yesterday and during some of the presentations, I thought was really, really valuable, because we're moving out of a world of, screwing your sister to be successful, to moving into a world where people collaborate, work together. We call it the harmonized systems economy, where you're always constantly looking at, rather than compromising and everybody being unhappy, that you're looking at harmonizing the environment and seeing where everybody benefits. And that hasn't really happened before because people don't really work together very well. And, even you mentioned earlier, Gerard and the caller, about, the associations that they're kind of scrapping over money because that's the way the system's built. We want to change all of those systems. And we believe that GBA is going to be a really important partner in enabling this to happen, because you've got to come from the perspective of what is the new value that we should be associating to the world. So that's looking at currencies and other things. And, that's got to be more than just finances. It's got to connect into who we are and what we stand for and what's important to us. But it's also on this values perspective of, what will we accept? How do we behave? And why is that behavior really, really important as we look at the networks and working groups and everything else that is coming together around the world? So what I've seen, and what I've seen particularly even just in getting more involved myself personally in the last few weeks, is a network that's growing really fast, that is pretty agile. It's learning how to motivate and inspire others throughout the group. I like the talk on, you were mentioning about whether you shut down groups or not. And I can see the conflict there, where you don't want to say you've got something that's not 100%. But whenever you're growing, it takes a bit of time. And it's better to put the resources in and make sure that what's there can grow and flourish rather than shut it down, because it's hard to put the arm back on again once you take it off.